Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 95,000. No, I'm just kidding. Welcome to the audio video room. I'd like to say that I could afford every new release. It's true, I can't. I'm a working artist. I have pets. I have a wife. I have a house. I have a mortgage. You've heard all these things from everybody else. The economy. But what do? Well, that's where I come in. I've got some cheap heat. I went through my collection and crazily enough, seems to focus on late 70s and early 80s, my peak years of listening to music as a kid. So I've picked a few selections that I think qualify as cheap heat, records that are easily found on the secondary market or at your local shop. Now, I don't have too many local shops near me, but I do have one really good one, and I've mentioned it before, Vintage Deluxe, located in Odessa. I went there recently, in fact, and went through their selection and found way too many things that I want, cassettes, CDs, and vinyl. So I focus on cheap heat right now. So expensive records are kind of out of reach for the time being, aside from a few pre-orders that I've put in. And I'm really going to focus on used records or used vinyl. And hopefully I can pass some of these along to you. So I found a few of these at my local antique mall, Vintage Deluxe. This is a shot of Vintage Deluxe when I went there the other day, and I asked if I could take a little quick video just to show everybody, again, the selection that they have, and hope that they just keep getting bigger and bigger and getting a bigger and bigger and better selection. They've really had some gems lately. I have a few selections that I've picked up, and one or two of these have come from there. So I wish I had more stores to go to. I don't. I do have these. There's also the secondary market online. I'm going to start off with this one, which is Minute by Minute by the Doobie Brothers. Now, this is the 8th studio album by the Doobie Brothers, released in December 1st of 1978. This was their last album to include members John Hartman until Cycles and Jeff Skunk Baxter, he of Steely Dan fame, early Steely Dan fame. So this was the last album to have some of the classic lineup members on it. This album spent 87 weeks, wrap your head around that, in the Billboard 200 chart. In the spring of 1979, Minute by Minute was the best-selling album in the US for 5 consecutive weeks. It was certified 3 times platinum. The big hit on this was What a Fool Believes, and it hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. What a Fool Believes is such a great song. So What a Fool Believes was so big, not only did it chart, it earned 3 Grammys. 3 Grammys in 1978, including Song and Record of the Year. Those are the sort of things that can put a band right over the top. So this is a Warner Brothers release and was produced by Todd Templeman. Well, I guess I should take it out of here, right? We're going to go full professional today. And there's the record. And you can find these in great shape at really low prices. Most of the vinyl, and I'll pop up the sales charts for what these things sell at, a lot of these are under $20 records. There's an exception in this group, but even that exception isn't too expensive. So pick number 1, Doobie Brothers, What a Fool Believes, Minute by Minute. What other bangers are on here? How Did the Fool Survive? Sweet Feeling, Open Your Eyes, Depending on You. Great classic Doobie Brothers. Now, of course, this is the Michael McDonald lineup. A lot of people don't care for the Michael McDonald lineup, but that's the lineup that I grew up with originally. If you make the exception of my mom playing Toulouse Street a lot. So I love that album as well. But yeah, Doobie Brothers. Now, my second pick for cheap heat is a classic. It defined my childhood. This album came out in 1982, November 29th. I was 12 years old and changed the next several years of my life. This was my number 1 artist for several years. Who am I talking about? The man, the myth, Michael Jackson and Thriller. Thriller is the 6th studio album by Michael Jackson, released on November 29th, 1982 by Epic Records. It was produced by Quincy Jones, who worked with Jackson on his album Off the Wall. in 1979. The recording took place from April to November in 1982 in Los Angeles, California, with a budget of $750,000. There's the gatefold, the famous gatefold. It's often recognized as an important event in American culture and is frequently named one of the greatest albums of all time. It remains the best-selling album of all time, and having sold an estimated 70 million copies worldwide. And you've got nothing but banger hits on this. Want to Be Starting Something, Baby Be Mine, The Girl Is Mine with Paul McCartney, his first credited solo Beatle to be on any of the Michael Jackson albums. Thriller, Beat It, Billie Jean, Human Nature, covered by you know who, PYT, Pretty Young Thing, The Lady in My Life, Human Nature, Miles Davis. PYT, Pretty Young Thing, The Lady in My Life, and produced by Quincy Jones. Now, if you can find an early pressing of this is a 1982 pressing, you'll want to look for the Quincy Jones production credit and no Michael Jackson production credit, because later pressings have Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson listed. Original pressings, and this is a Pittman pressing of Michael Jackson's Thriller, do not have that Michael Jackson credit that was put on later copies. Now, it comes with this famous insert with these drawings on it and the lyric sheet. You've got two Michael Jackson drawings, and both of these Michael Jackson drawings were drawn many times by this kid when he was 12 years old and given to various girls at school. I got a lot of friends that way. So always use your art skills. PYT, Pretty Young Thing. Oh, I'm telling you, sometimes I just find myself singing that at work. This is an Epic label, and this is, again, a Pittman pressing. And you can find this on secondary markets for relatively low bucks. Again, you can find this album, this pressing, for under $20 if you look around. The hard part with this guy is finding a clean copy that wasn't played to death. I know I played my copy to death. This is a replacement copy for my childhood copy. And finding a clean copy was a little bit tougher than I thought, but it can be done. You don't have to pay $100 for a MoFi version. A version which I'm still looking to get. I really want to hear that version. I've heard people say it's too clean. This is not too clean. This album has a reputation for a reason. Thriller. As a cheap heat record, 100%. The soundstage you get in this thing is insane. Insane. Inexpensive systems sound fantastic with this thing playing. This thing was made and cut hot, many people say, to be played on the average person's system. And it definitely shows. It's some serious cheap heat. I know, guilty pleasure, I had to put it in this list since we're focusing on a certain timestamp, if you will, the 80s. So Michael Jackson, Thriller. Now, this next cheap heat is a record I found on my recent Vintage Deluxe visit. I stopped by because I saw that they had a certain record there, and I told them to hold it for me, and because they're such a great store, they did. So when I went in the next day on my way to the tattoo parlor, I stopped by and picked this up, and I said, you know, I shouldn't, but I'm going to look around. And that's where I found this record. This record was the Kinks' State of Confusion, 1983. Arista Records, pressed at RCA, recorded at Konk Studios. Konk Studios was their private studio, and that Konk studio was used in a video for theirs that I'll put in the insert here. They use it in a video. They recorded the album there. They own that studio, and I often wonder if the Gorillaz Kong studio was a reference to the Kinks' Konk studio. But Konk Studio mastered at Masterdisc. There's that famous Masterdisc imprint you see on the vinyl again. Mastered by who at Masterdisc? Bob Ludwig. That's right. The great Robert Ludwig mastered this album. Now, Ray Davies was a standout as always. I got to meet Ray and photograph him when I lived in Detroit. And what a legend. Kind gentleman, polite guy. He's everything you wanted him to be when you meet a legend. State of Confusion is the 20th studio album by the Kinks, released in 1983. It was their record that had the hit Come Dancin', which is, where's Come Dancin'? First side fourth song in, Come Dancin'. Come Dancin' was released in 1983 and peaked at number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was one of the band's biggest hit singles in the United States and equaled the 1965 peak that the band had with Tired of Waiting for You, that great hit. Now, the album was a major success, peaked at number 12 on the Billboard Albums chart. The album was certified gold in Canada in 1983. It was the last Kinks album which their drummer appeared as a full-time member. They said it was recorded during a time of turmoil in the group. Ray recalled it was a difficult time, 1983 and 1984. Songs like Definite Maybe, State of Confusion, the album title, it's all got this concern about it. And if you look at the album cover, everybody going in different directions, that was the last of the band's output together for this lineup. Now, this album, The Kinks State of Confusion, is on Arista Records. There's side 1 and there is side 2. And you see that classic Arista Records. It's a 33 and a third. These are all 33 and a third. Here's the liner. And again, State of Confusion, the band's state of mind at the time they made this album. But oh, what a great album. I remember Casey Kasem playing Come Dancing all the time. And I would make tape recordings and play them when I mowed the lawn. Recorded at Kong Studios, mastered by Bob Ludwig. There you can see that, Bob Ludwig at Master Disc Studios. And this, again, this is on the resale secondary market for easy peasy pickings all day long. Most of these albums, I'll pop up the charts of what they're currently selling for, are really honestly under $20 records with the exception of one. That is coming up. Now, this next record is one that I saw in a video for That Antique Mall Vintage Deluxe. And I emailed them or texted them and said, can you hold that for me? I'll grab it on my way into work tomorrow because I didn't have it and I've been looking for it. And what is that album? It is this album, The Hurting, released in 1983. Now, this is a Polygram Records, and like I said, international pressing. This is a Richmond pressing. It's a album that was also a master disc. So this again was lacquer cut at master disc. Now I couldn't find an exact name to be attached to that, but if you look at the back, see what it says there? Digitally mastered recording. So this is a digitally mastered recording and also advertised, also available on cassette. So you could totally tell it was 1983. Digital was now hip and cool, whereas people poo-poo or naysay it these days, seemingly. But here we are. The Hurting, Tears for Fears. Now, this is an interesting fact I found out from The Hurting. 3 songs on The Hurting are some of the most mainstream hip-hop and R&B sampled songs come from this. Memories Fade was reworked by Kanye West on his 4th album, 808 and Heartbreak. That's a great album, but I did not know that. Into Coldest Winter. Ideas as Opiates was sampled by Drake on the song Lust for Life on his 3rd mixtape, So Far Gone, from 2009. And Pale Shelter, this one I knew, was sampled by The Weeknd on the song Secrets for his 3rd studio album, Starboy. Now, Mad World from this album was covered by Michael Andrews and Gary Jules for the soundtrack to the 2001 film Donnie Darko. I love that film. One of the best things about that movie is its score. And I got to see Gary Jules with my wife in Detroit. Got to meet and talk to him for a couple minutes. He was at a small club gig where almost nobody showed up. There was probably maybe less than 50 people there. My wife and I were 2 of them. And it allowed for an intimate, quiet evening with Gary Jules, acoustic guitar, singing all of his best-known work, including Mad World. Great guy, kind guy. Now, Carolyn Orzabal is the child vocal on Suffer the Children. What happened to Caroline Orzabal? If you follow Roland from this band at all, you'll find out that his wife died in 2017, aged 54, after suffering from alcoholism-related dementia and cirrhosis, which came about having been diagnosed with depression. Her death led the band to cancel its tour dates. Now, She's on this song here, Suffer Little Children. And I think they've pitch shifted her voice to sound like a little child. But it's from this album, and this album sounds fantastic. And one of the reasons I went to pick this up was it's such a clean copy. It's darn near mint. Now, I got to see this band on the next album tour, but I didn't see them on this tour. I saw them on the big one. So, you know, the big tour with all the big hits from Shout Shout, Let It All Out, and Everybody Wants to Rule the World. I saw that tour, but I didn't see this tour. But what an album. I mean, it's just bangers. The Hurting, Mad World, Pale Shelter, Memories Fade, Suffer the Children, Change. What a great song. Do Yourself a Service. Now, this is the one that I was saying it was a little pricier. Now, depending on the secondary market charts that you'll find online or like on Discogs, it averages anywhere from $25 to $45, $50, which is the area that I paid for it. Now, the cool thing was about Vintage Deluxe, they basically threw in that Kinks album I showed earlier, which was fantastic. And that's what's great about supporting any local record shops you can, and sort of, you know, if you can avoid the big stores like Walmart, if you will, or Target. I say if you will. Let's play an if you will drinking game. Every time I say if you will, go ahead and take a shot. A kid. So yeah, The Hurting. The Hurting is such a solid album. Such a solid album. Oh, here it is. I wanted to show you the insert, the inner sleeve. That so it needed a clean as well. It's got Kurt Smith, vocals, bass, keyboards, Roland Orzabal, vocals, guitar, keyboards, rhythm programming. Those are the two guys we all want. But Chris Hughes on percussion, Mel Collins on saxophones, Carolyn Orzabal, child vocal on Suffer the Children. You see that there. And then on the flip side, it's got all the lyrics to all the songs. I'm telling you, such a good song. Look at the guys there. Look at them. Look how young they were. I'll put some other pictures up of how young they were. But man, they're babies when they released this album. Now, the other album cover with the crying baby really kind of shows what this album is about. It's really dark and depressing themes overall, but sometimes they come out like bangers, you know, like Change, for instance, you know, The Hurting, Pale Shelter. I mean, just pop songs, mood songs, great album, The Hurting. Again, under $50, cheap heat. So on to our next one, and this is a cool one. So this next band, if you know, you know. And talking about cheap heat, this thing charged for well under $5. You can find this thing for $3, and it's nuts. I don't know why, but it's such a fantastic album. And once you've heard it, you're forever going to be a fan and want a copy of this album. Who am I talking about? Who am I talking about? Lone Justice. That's Maria McKee. That's the selling point of this band above and beyond anything. Now, this is Geffen Records. This is 1985, so I would have been 15. And I remember seeing this record and seeing Maria McKee and going, yeah, I'm buying that. I'm definitely buying that. And I mean, you can see why when I was 15. But amazing to find out this album is a banger. Cheap heat. You can't give this album away sometimes. It's in cutout bins. You find a clean copy of this thing, and this kind of music is your bag. Now think Linda Ronstadt-esque tunes, belting out tunes. Now this was mixed at Sound City and Power Station, and this thing had power behind it. People were, this is going to be it. This is our next big thing. Maria McKee is best known for Lone Justice, but she also had some cool notes here. Her 1990 song Later, Show Me Heaven, and her song If Love is a Red Dress, Hang Me in Rags are in the soundtrack to the film Pulp Fiction. There's a little key for you. She's on the soundtrack to Pulp Fiction. McKee was a founding member of this cowpunk and proto-American band. And in 1982, they released two albums. This one, Lone Justice, and Shelter, also a great album, the following year, before disbanding in 1987. In 1983, she sang the song Never Be You from the soundtrack of the movie Streets of Fire. And I should pull it and find it for you, Streets of Fire, but I just said it, Streets of Fire. Whole album's great. movie's great. Great movie. We'll do that one day. But she's on that soundtrack. She sings a song. Now, Benmont Tench of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers was a frequent guest musician at their shows, their live shows. The band got early support right away from Dolly Parton, who attended one of their club shows and later recalled Maria McKee as the greatest girl singer any band could have. How about that? You're getting recommends from Dolly Parton. Holy moly. And it's true. Look up the videos. Look up Lone Justice. Look up this album from this time period, their self-titled debut album, and you'll be a fan. I'm telling you. Now, here's the interesting thing. She was the younger half-sister of Brian McLean of the band Love, and all you audiophiles love Love. I don't own the Love album. I've heard it. I'd love to get it, pun intended. But how about that? So she was the half-sister. And she formed the band in 1982 with guitarist Ryan Hedgecock, both fans of country and rockabilly. And you can hear the country and rockabilly in this album for sure. It's sort of like the Stray Cats, but in the way that they tip their toe in the past, but keep it present and modern. And this is definitely above and beyond that 80s sound that we all know so well. This sounds like a real band that got stuck in the 80s and nobody knew how to take that. You know, they weren't walking around synthesizers and pink hair and leopard skin. But basically, after all that support, the reviews were glowing. Pre-release over-promotion set expectations too high. It was impossible to satisfy those expectations, no matter how good their self-titled debut was. It failed to capture either rock fans or country fans and only reached number 56 on the top 200 album chart. In the wake of all that, McKee and Hedgecock put together a revised lineup, and Steve Van Zandt was brought in to co-produce. Festooned with drum machines and mainstream product gloss, this time the second effort sold less. It didn't meet the expectations because this was the real deal. This was a band. Their follow-up, while I do like it, it's definitely over-processed 80s gloss. And that's what everybody was glomming onto in the 80s. Not this. This sounds like, if this was released now, it'd be huge. It would be huge. In fact, they got together in the wake of all that and reunited 38 years and had a new album released in October of 2024. So they reunited after those two albums didn't make it for them. She went on to her own success. She had a lot of success writing for people as well. But one of her albums, it says, was left on the shelf for 2 years before it was released. Can you imagine that? And when you look her up and you check this album out, you'll go, holy shit, how did that girl not make it? How was she not one of the world's biggest stars? I'm telling you, I'll hear it in the comments. Leave it in the comments if you know about this album. Yeah, Maria McKee. I mean, this is definitely one of those albums, and this sounds shallow now, but people would buy it for this album cover. It's fantastic photography. I emulated this shot so many times doing promotional band shots, and I don't think they had any idea where it came from. They would always tell me, oh, that looks great. I love how yeah, Monkeys, Lone Justice. This is a very popular pose, but when done right like that and put her right front and center, and you hear the sound that comes out of this woman, and you won't believe it comes from this tiny little thing. So yeah, produced by Jimmy Iovine, Maria McKee, Ryan Hedgecock, Martin Etzioni, and Don Heffington, with Benmont Tench on piano and organ. Benmont Tench. So yeah, that's about it for this one. I can't give it any higher regard than I've already given it. Oh, I should show you the vinyl. This is the vinyl. Geffen Records this time. Find it, find it, find it. Find it super clean. There are sealed copies out there floating around. This was a sealed copy I found a couple years ago, and I snapped it up. I think I got it for like 25 cents, and you can find it online right now for $4, $5. You'll pay more for shipping than this record. Can't recommend it enough. Lone Justice, the debut. Okay, now I've been doing these things in order of release. So we started with the oldest, and we're in this cheap heat. This was the last chronologically. and it's my favorite of everything I'm showing you today. I often bought records as a kid based on looks of the album jackets. I wanted to go into product design. I did product design. I've done photography. I've worked in literature, journalism, um, roadied. So I went by the arts a lot. I'm a very visual oriented guy. And this was MTV was already happening, and I had seen this band's on their first album. They had a video. So this band I'm talking about, near and dear to my heart, and as you'll find out, near and dear to someone else's heart as well. This is the 3 O'clock. Now, this copy is my copy, has the hype sticker, still in the shrink. I told you I was that way when I was young. I kept the shrink on. If it had a hype, I tried to keep the hype. So, Arrive Without Traveling, IRS Records, 1985. That puts this guy at 15 years old when I got this record. Now, the 3 O'clock, I knew nothing about. I was wearing paisley and had dippy hair like that. The paisley movement was in full effect. Very Pretty in Pink. If you look at Pretty in Pink, Molly Ringwald's fashion in that, that's Paisley Underground, you know? So the 3 O'clock is an American alternative rock band associated with the Los Angeles Paisley Underground scene. Now here's the back of the album. You can kind of get the vibe. Paisley Underground. There's Paisley's on his shirt there, Paisley's. Lead singer and bassist Michael Quisera. Where's Michael? This is Michael right here. This guy, the pretty young guy, the Davy Jones of the 3 O'clock. He is actually credited with coining the term Paisley Underground to describe a scene in 1980s LA music scene, which included bands like the Dream Syndicate, Rain Parade, and the Bangles. So 3 great representations of, and Prince as well. Around the World in a Day, his follow-up to Purple Rain, was definitely influenced by the Paisley Underground scene in Los Angeles and this band. And you'll see how it comes full circle. Now, they were signed to IRS. They originally formed under the name Salvation Army, and in 1981 were forced to change their name. They were signed to IRS Records for their follow-up album to the album that brought them notice, which had a hit called Jet Fighter on it. Now, I had seen a video for Jet Fighter on MTV at that time, and I was wondering who this band was. And so I remembered when I saw this in my local record store, I was like, that's the band, that's the guy, that's the band, that's the song. Now, I couldn't find that record at the time, but I did find this. And this thing got played like mad in my house by me. Must have drove my parents crazy. Now, this band had a minor hit with this album with the song Her Head's Revolving, which is the lead-off track on side 1. Her Head's Revolving got regular airplay on MTV, and so did Half the Way There. Now, Half the Way There is the first song on the second side, Half the Way There. Now, the follow-up to this was called Vermilion, and it was on Warner Brothers Records by way of Paisley Park. Yeah, that Paisley Park. So Prince got their follow-up made. Now, Prince was aware from Arrive Without Traveling. This is a quote from the lead singer. He was aware of us from Arrive Without Traveling and Her Head's Revolving. Look up the video for Her Head's Revolving as well as the prior albums, Jet Fighter. They're cool videos. They're very retro. They're very vintage. Now, they said, the Bangles told us that he was a fan, and when we were off of IRS Records, he sent a label person to see us live. Prince himself contributed a song called Neon Telephone to that second album under the pseudonym Joey Coco. And you can find Prince's, often would do demos. You can find Prince's demo to a lyrical guide sheet for any band that when he wrote music for, it gave him a template of how it would sound. I have a record of all those originals that he had done for other people. And it's amazing to hear him sing these songs. And if you look up the Neon Telephone, Prince, you can find it here on YouTube. And you can also look up Neon Telephone by the 3 O'clock. Now, that's not on this album, but it's cool to hear Prince being a fan of a band almost nobody seems to know about. Now, they did have a reunion several years later. It kind of came to nothing. They did some live touring. I think it was around 2017, 18, 19. You can look those up on YouTube as well. The lead singer really hasn't changed much, and he nails it live still. It sounds just like this album. So this album, just like those other ones, Cheap Heat. This is a great album. This was on IRS, and IRS put out a lot of great bands at that period. Everybody from the Police and REM, and there's the other side there. Nice gold label. And you can find a good copy of this in good shape relatively easily for under 20 bucks. Man. And generally, because this was not a popular record, when you see it in collections, oftentimes, or you see it in stores, you'll see it in shrink wrap, you'll see it with this hype sticker. And generally, the record's usually in pretty good shape because it didn't get a lot of play. They didn't sell very much. They had minor hits, and it was where I heard about them. It was sort of the college scene. I was 15 at the time, and I followed a lot of the alternative rock, college rock playlists and stations and radio stations. And I lived close to Ann Arbor, University of Michigan. So there was always college rock playing where I lived in the Detroit area. So I think these are some great suggestions. I hope you can find some love in one of these. Again, with the exception of The Hurting and maybe occasionally a Michael Jackson Thriller, depending on its shape. But those are all, those two, maybe 40 bucks. If it's sealed in plastic, maybe 50 bucks. But used secondary markets, all of these things can be found for under $20. Now that's some cheap heat. And they're albums that you will be playing a lot, especially that Lone Justice and that 3 o'clock. So I hope these helped. I hope you found some of that stuff, Cheap Heat. I hope you can look them up and find them, add some to your collection. That's it for today's video. I'd like to thank everybody. Like and subscribe. I'm getting closer and closer to that 500 number. And it would mean so much if you could like and subscribe and add some comments. I've made some serious friends in the comments. And I really appreciate everybody. And hopefully all of you will keep collecting records, and we will see you soon all over again here in the AV room. Thank you as always.